Ready?
Rolling.
And you can look at me for that.
Okay.
In sports, when that big moment happens, for both the victor and those defeated, everything changes. Because no matter how great the season or even the career, second place will never bring the same notoriety that first place does. For Carl Edwards, a championship seemed to be within reach on many occasions, but big moments never panned out in the favor of the Midwest racer. So what if a few moments in Carl Edwards' career were just slightly different? Carl Edwards grew up in Missouri, and at just 2 weeks old, he was already going to the local racetracks cheering on his father, Carl Edwards Sr. However, unlike most current drivers on the NASCAR circuit, the cousin to racing legend Ken Schrader didn't start racing until the age of 13, but a slow start into racing didn't have an effect on his speed on the racetrack. His on-track success led him to the dirt modifieds in 1997, where he just kept on winning. And soon, Carl was becoming a fan favorite, known for his signature backflips following victories. But this wasn't the end goal in Carl's mind. For him, NASCAR was what the young driver had his eyes set on. So much so that Carl would spend his weekends at the racetrack in the NASCAR garage, handing out business cards to team owners and NASCAR personnel to anyone who would stop and talk to him. Finally, in 2002, Carl caught his big break. He landed 7 Truck Series races for MB Motorsports. Carl's best finish was 8th place in fairly poor equipment. It was enough to catch the attention of car owner Jack Roush, who recently lost his Truck Series driver Kyle Busch to Hendrick Motorsports. Roush signed Edwards to a full-time Truck Series ride the following year in 2003.
I mean, it's a dream come true. I'm living my dreams.
That season, Edwards picked up 3 wins.
Carl Edwards sees the checkered flag and wins.
Man, this is the greatest day of my life.
Won Rookie of the Year honors.
That was a 9.9 right there, bro.
In the 2004 season, with plans to continue racing solely in the same Truck Series ride, Carl caught yet another break at the halfway point of the season. After losing sponsorships in the number 99 car, Jeff Burton, who raced for Jack Roush in the Cup Series, decided to head to Richard Childress Racing. Roush filled the seat with his young and up-and-coming Truck Series driver, Carl Edwards, for the remainder of the season. And in 2005, in his rookie season, Edwards grabbed 4 wins and was one of the most dominant drivers on the NASCAR circuit, ultimately ending the season tied for second to Tony Stewart at just a 35-point margin. However, his best years were yet to come. In 2008, Carl scored more victories than any other driver with 9 wins on the season. The championship seemed all but in the bag for Edwards, but towards the end of the postseason, a wreck at Talladega, followed by mechanical issues at Charlotte, ruined his championship hopes.
We are watching Carl Edwards' championships hopes evaporate.
In 2009, Carl Edwards' sponsor, Office Depot, surprisingly left and went to Tony Stewart instead. And to make matters worse, in 2011, the championship would come down to the final race at Homestead against Tony Stewart. Edwards led in points and needed to finish the race ahead of the number 14 car. With a great start in the race, Edwards would ultimately succumb to Stewart in the later laps. The final points ended in a tiebreaker, in which Tony was crowned champion as he had more wins on the season in comparison to Edwards.
I wish so bad we had that trophy, but it just wasn't meant to be tonight.
In 2015, after spending his entire Cup career with Jack Roush, Edwards made the decision to switch to Joe Gibbs Racing in the number 19 car.
This is the biggest decision I've ever had to make.
And in 2016, he'd have yet another shot at the title. Edwards needed to finish ahead of 3 other drivers in order to get his long-awaited championship at Homestead.
The most nervous points of my life have been leading races with 20 laps to go.
And in dominating fashion, Edwards led the majority of the race and a championship was becoming a reality. But with a handful of the laps remaining, this happened.
Turn 2, Dylan Lupton hit the wall.
And Carl Edwards says, "You have got to be kidding me."
Which then led to this during the restart.
Joey Logano drives Carl Edwards to the inside of the track and into the wall. Carl Edwards, who seemed to be in the right position, who's on his way to a championship.
Carl Edwards' championship bid is over.
And yet another championship slipped from his fingertips. Then, less than 2 months later, Carl Edwards shocked the NASCAR community.
So I'm stepping away from full-time driving in the Cup Series.
Retiring from NASCAR.
Losing the championship the way you did and the inevitable sting that had to come from that, might things have been different if you'd won the championship?
That's a very interesting question.
After 13 seasons, Edwards grabbed 220 top 10s, 124 top 5 finishes, and 28 wins. But imagine what it would sound like with a championship added to his resume. What if in 2005, Tony Stewart didn't go on a run at the midway point of the season? Or in 2008, Carl didn't wreck at Talladega or have the struggles at Charlotte? Would it have been enough to hold off the dominant force of Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus at their prime? In 2011, it's been noted that leading up to the final race at Homestead, Tony went out of his way to get in Carl's head.
Carl Edwards better be really worried. That's all I got to say. He's not going to sleep for the next 3 weeks.
You know, they say that there's talkers and doers. I've done this twice.
Is it possible he psyched Edwards out? And during the race, Stewart struggled at the beginning, while Edwards dominated all evening. What if Tony's team wasn't able to make adjustments? Would Carl have finished on top? And if he did, would he have stayed at Roush Racing instead of leaving later in 2015? But even if he did go to Gibbs, what if the number 32 car didn't bring out a late race caution at Homestead in 2016? Would Carl Edwards finally get a championship? And if he did, would he have ultimately stayed in NASCAR instead of retiring at what is still a young age for most drivers? If Carl stayed in the number 19 car, where would that have put Daniel Suarez? Or 3 years later, would Martin Truex Jr. have been out of a ride? What if Edwards did win one of Tony Stewart's championships? Would Stewart still have been a first ballot NASCAR Hall of Famer? So why did Carl Edwards retire? It seemed like he planned to come back. And why was it right before the season? Joe Gibbs, his last team owner, has even stated he doesn't fully know why Edwards walked. If he stayed, would he have won a championship? Apparently, it's been reported that Carl still gets offers to come back to NASCAR every season, including this year when the number 42 car opened up during quarantine. But he continues to turn down the opportunities. So is Edwards ever going to race again? Or have we seen the last of Carl Edwards? In what was a career defined by specific moments, how would the outlook on Carl change if things had gone slightly different? What if Carl Edwards never handed out business cards in the garage area? And what if Kyle Busch never left Roush? Would we even know who Carl Edwards is? We will never know, because what we do know is what actually happened.